For fans of early arcade games, those by Williams certainly stood out amongst the crowd, especially with frenetic action offered by hits like Defender and Robotron 2084. And with any genuine hit, there's always going to be a follow-up, whether officially or unofficially. As is the case with Blaster, the next game from VidKids, the team of Eugene Jarvis and Larry DeMar, launching in 1983, Blaster serves as an unofficial continuation to Robotron. But Blaster did really start its life out in the arcades. I know. Blaster was originally designed for a home platform, specifically the Atari 5200. This is Beyond the Scanlines. Believing the 5200 would be utterly amazing, VidKids focused on developing it for Atari's 8-bit computer line, with the knowledge that once the 5200 was finalised, bringing it over would be trivial, as both the computers and 5200 share the same core hardware. A more than reasonable plan, you might say, if not for one detail. The arcade version always came first. When they showed prototypes of the game to Williams, the call was made to move towards an arcade release, and that is where Blaster would first appear. Taking place in 2085, you are tasked with escaping the Robotron-dominated Earth and through 20 waves blast your way through to paradise. It's a journey across time and space involving blasting quite a lot of aliens and rescuing stranded astronauts. All from the cockpit view of your fancy blaster ship. But it didn't go down well with the public for one simple reason. It's tough. Brutally so. Whilst it's quite the technical marvel, with its hardware allowing for sprites to be scaled and many of them to be thrown on screen at once, the resulting difficulty made it fail as players don't get engaged with arcade games offering too high a difficulty. So, with only 500 machines produced, Blaster's life in arcades was all but brief. Which threw a spanner into the works for an eventual home release. Though a deal would be eventually made with Atari, and the game finished off for the computer line, the US video game crash of 1983 and its subsequent effects would mean it would never see release. Instead, lying in wait until it was recovered and posted online for all to enjoy many years later. Which is a bit of a shame really, as quite frankly, it's a far better experience than the arcade machine, with a more realistic level of challenge, though coming at a cost of a fair bit of simplification. Instead of the 20-stage gauntlet to paradise, each stage is made up of 4 waves. Firstly, the robot grid. Here, you're flying over the surface of a planet, and simply need to fly through as many arches as possible to gain points, all whilst avoiding the robots and their fire. Once you blast off the robot grid, you move into the time tunnel sequence. Here, you simply need to rescue the floating astronauts. Picking them up in sequence earns you an increasing bonus for each one. Next, you blast your way into outer space, which is back to pure frenetic blasting. Turned up to 11 of course, as whilst there's no obstacles you need to fly through like the arches on the robot grid, you will be under assault by greater numbers of alien craft. You've got 4 main enemies here, each proving to be deadly in their own distinct ways. Surviving that will move you to the last wave in the sequence, Planetoids. You're now flying through a field of them, and your goal is simply to get to the other side, whilst avoiding or blasting any of those which get in your way. There are also alien sources lying in wait. Timing your shots to get them as they close in will also earn you an extra set of bonus points. Like with the time tunnel wave, you'll also encounter astronauts to pick up, and if you can follow the chain of them, you'll pick up the Energizer, netting another handy bonus and a quick walk to the end of the stage. Unsurprisingly, that takes you back to the robot grid where you'll do it all over again, just with more enemies to ruin your day along the way. Visually, the focus is on speed over fancy sprites. The result being that everything is drawn from squares. It means when looking at these screens statically, it might be a bit of a mess. But once in motion, identifying threats is typically not too challenging, except for the robot grid stage when the bands indicating the surface and the wall obstacles you need to avoid can get a bit in the way. It does sound like a strange style to use, but I quite appreciate it for being visually distinct. Especially once you get past the robot grid, it really opens up thanks to the backgrounds being nothing more than a starfield without those ground bars to interfere. Audio-wise, Blaster is truly at its best here, as it uses the pokey sound hardware of the computers to maximum effect, with plenty of thumping sounds for your shots, enemy attacks, collecting astronauts, and more. To be honest, this doesn't surprise me at all, if only because of the talent involved. The Williams arcade games at the time offered amazing sets of sound effects, so to see this level of awesome replicated on the humble Atari 8-bits is quite an outstanding feat. Let's talk controls. With Blaster's arcade counterpart using an analog flight stick as part of its experience, you're left with simple, straightforward 8-way inputs on the computers. They do work great though, as at no point I never really found them knocking me out of being engaged with the action. They were more than responsive enough and didn't get in the way. I will admit, I kind of enjoyed hitting the boost button while playing the arcade version, and to see it not being part of the original design was a bit of a limitation, but one I think I can live with. But then again, considering how hard the hardware was pushed here, it's probably for the best it wasn't included. I do also have to admit, as horrible as the 5200 controller supposedly is, I would love to have seen this officially released there, as it's one of those games where I think the controller may have suited it quite well. And I'm sure that was a factor that contributed to being considered the original lead system in development. While Blaster may not be an arcade game as fondly remembered as some of the other titles released by the team at VidKids, it's one which truly does deserve a shot. It may be brutal, but I find its action to be quite engaging and well worth putting some playtime into. Thankfully, if you can get your hands on the original Midway Arcade Treasures pack, it's included there on the various systems. As for the Atari computer version, I had a lot of fun with it. The relaxed difficulty compared to the arcade machine makes it far more approachable and engaging, and a tight gameplay loop makes for a great piece of blasting action. Crank up the volume, turn out those lights, grab your favourite joystick, and get blasting. It's really an experience you'll have a lot of fun with. And with that, I think I'm just going to leave it there, so thank you all very much for watching.